Well, hello again. Welcome back to the Alan Hudson Podcast. Thanks very much for joining us again. Before we introduce our guest today, he needs no introduction. He's Brian Little, of course. Used to be at Aston Villa as both player and manager. A host of clubs he managed as well. But before we get to Brian, just a reminder to please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. And another reminder: if you've ever got any questions for Alan, please use the comment section below the podcast, and we'll try and answer any question you've got. So, on to the guest for today, Mr. Brian Little. Brian, thanks very much for joining us. It's great to have you on board.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I mean, as soon as I hear the word Alan Hudson and people who from that era were very much my heroes, and I played against one or two of them at times. I mean, it's just brilliant to be in his company. So I'm really honoured. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Listen, mate, guys, it's great to have you on. You were one of the great Villa players, and like me, you didn't get enough caps, or if you got, it's the way it is in our country.
Yeah, I think people don't understand, like nowadays, that many get-togethers, that many friendlies, that many this, that, and the other. But back in the day, to get into the England squad, you did well to get in, and once you were in, you got a chance if you. But they were cast in stone for years, weren't they? They pretty much stayed the same, and you could understand it. But there was nothing like the modern day getting-togethers and people getting chances. So it's just one of those things, isn't it, Alan? It's a difficult era to play. Well, it was a great era to play in all fairness. But yeah, the cap wise, lots of people say to me, "Well, how many caps did you get?" I go, "1," and they go, "Wow, you're joking."
Yeah, it's an amazing thing how people judge you on that one.
Yes.
Like I'm sure when you was at Stoke, you must have heard of the great Jimmy Greenough.
Oh yes, yeah.
I mean, he's a typical example of the problem with the England setup. Is my time I spent with Jimmy was as good as playing with anybody anywhere. You was that type of player.
Yeah.
Someone easy.
But as I said, I think as you say though, there just wasn't enough games. I mean, there was a tournament every 2 years, and that was pretty much it. And get-togethers were the week before sort of thing. It wasn't anything like it is today. So it's just the era we played in. But like anything, I wouldn't swap it for anything, to be honest. I thought it was a great time to play.
Give us an example of the players that were blocking your path in terms of England recognition, Brian.
Well, Keegan, Trevor Francis. I actually got into the England team before. I mean, here in Birmingham, Trevor and I were like, every week we were like front page of the Sports Argus and things like that, and from the youth team days we were, there was this Brian Little, Trevor Francis, who's the best player sort of thing. And it's still today, people in Birmingham, Trevor was my biggest adversary really, but we got on great together, and when he passed away, it was a real bad day for me. I mean, because we were really good friends, to be honest, but Trevor and Kevin, probably the two. Mick Shannon played in that role off forwards as well, sort of thing. There were a lot of good players in that era, I mean, I got a chance. I think Don Revie the year I got into the England squad, we got promoted from the second division to the first division. And we won the League Cup as well as a second division club. And I'd scored 24 goals, I think it was, that season. And when I got called up, I was surprised. I was thinking, crikey, I haven't played. And I remember my first game in the first division, Paul Madeley marked me. And I never got a kick. I remember thinking, crikey, I thought I was a good player. And we played the Leeds team, the famous Leeds team, beat us, battered us 1-0. But we never got a kick in. And I remember then thinking, crikey, I'm nowhere near good enough for this. So, crazy days, really, to be honest.
But funnily enough, we got something in common, because that happened with me with the same player at Stamford Bridge one night. But in my first season, we played them in the League Cup, and I had the same problem with him. He was far too strong for me. I hadn't quite fulfilled my strength, really. And Sexton made the change at half time and brought Johnny Boyle on and moved me onto the wing, and we end up winning 2-0. But I knew after playing against him we had to do a lot more long distance running and strengthening up in certain ways and changing my game a little bit more. And then it never bothered me again. But it was a good test.
Yeah, it was an era where you learned yourself more than anything else. I mean, the managers and the coaches, when you look at the way the detail they do today, it's unbelievable. But I think you had to learn on your own, and you also trusted the senior players to tell you what to do and teach you what to do. I mean, I initially played with a fella in the first team called Andy Lockhead. And Andy was like, I was frightened of him, so were other people from the other teams. But Andy Lockhead taught me so much it was untrue, like how to play off a main striker and where he expected me to be. Because I think in them days, the centre forward was very pivotal in the game, wasn't he? It was a ball into the striker and you'd link in from play from wide areas. So it was a completely different game. I mean, today they change tactics every week, and it's like, well, why are they doing that? You were trusted as a team.
Time, Brian, when you was a kid, you played alongside.
Yeah. I played. Pardon?
He must have been about 70, mustn't he? When
he was. Well, Andy was signed specifically to get the club back into the first division, and he left before that, unfortunately. I mean, and then I played with Andy Gray and people like that. But Andy Lockhead, when I was 17 and I got into the first team, he was a warrior. It was a battle, centre half versus centre forward. And there was loads of people like that in that era. Then you had the more technical side of people. I had a little lad called Davy Gibson, Scottish player who played for Leicester, who came, and he used to just talk to me about football all the time, football. And you didn't have your coaches and your managers. Your coaches and managers bought you or sold you, because we didn't have big squads. They wanted a certain player to play a certain way. And it was completely different then. I mean, Ron Saunders never once ever told me how to play football. He trusted me. He played me with Andy Gray, who was a great player. A young lad called Keith Leonard, who unfortunately got injured after his first season in the first team, but he was a good player. But there was a team, and I was allowed to do what I wanted, really. Ron Saunders just said to me, every now and again he'd pick me up with something, but it was all about giving me freedom to play. And you signed a player when the manager thought he wanted somebody better than him. They didn't have big squads, and it was great. It was a completely different game. And I as I've said, Andy Lockhead was the first person to really get hold of me. And sort of say, you can be a good player, son, but you need to learn this, you need to do that. It wasn't the manager, it was the players themselves. Bruce Rioch was an influence on me as well. Bruce, I played with Bruce for a long time as a midfielder. And Bruce was, and I worked for him at Middlesbrough when I went into coaching, and he was really good at that as well. So, yeah, I think I've been fortunate enough to be around good people at the right time, so that was really influential on my career.
Well, that's great to hear, and it's the same really. As you say, you do learn off other players and plan, and who you're best suited to play alongside. But the Andy Lockhead thing is, me and my friend were joking about it at the weekend. We talk about football a lot. They talk about the Duncan Fergusons,
yes.
And the Mick Harfords.
Yeah. Oh.
I've never seen anyone harder than Andy Lockhead. I see him play for Burnley one day at White Hart Lane, and he battered. But he battered the Spurs had just won the double, and they went there in the FA Cup the following year on a snowy pitch, icy pitch, and he battered the back four into the net. He was smashing them into the net. It was mate. I thought.
Yeah. Oh, he always said to everybody in the dressing room, he'd stand there and say, right, I'm the most important player in this team, because if I beat the centre half today, we're going to win. He said, but it's going to be a battle, and it was all based around, first ball, where's the centre forward, hit them with the ball, And then people like me played off him. And Andy just reveled in that, absolutely reveled in it. He was great. He often said to me, you might get hit with a bit of blood when you run past me sometimes, because I might have splattered his nose. So he was brilliant. He's just real hard man who, I mean, on the training ground, he'd chase people. Like if he was angry with them, he'd chase them around. When he spoke in the dressing room. We also had another fella who came in and was a great influence on us, called George Curtis, the centre half. Big George.
Yeah.
George Curtis, my word. He was the toughest man I've ever known, so they were men. It wasn't, if you were in the team at 18, 19, you'd gone, like, you were thought of, because it was an older man's game, wasn't it, really?
Yeah.
There was a lot of my team when I first went in, I'm playing with lads who were 28 to 30, not 19, 20, 21, 22s. They're all been around a long time. So if you got in the team at 17, it was a hell of an achievement, because you were playing with men, and today, I mean, the academies are bringing kids around with so much ability. It's untrue, you can't deny that, but a lot of them are told what to do and how to play, whereas, the players taught us how to do all that sort of thing.
I think the problem we have is today, watching the modern game, especially you mentioned people like Andy Lockhead, Mick Harford, whoever, can you imagine players today pulling their shirts, at corners and things like that? And it makes me laugh. I laugh. I always think of black players like that. They would just bat them aside, didn't they? And they wouldn't get out.
Yeah, there was a different type of respect, wasn't there? Really, I mean, today they don't even look at who's taking the corner half the time now. They're busy fighting with each other. Whereas, back in the day, as I've said, it was great to play in it. People always say to me, "Oh, yeah, I bet you could. What would you be like today?" And I'm going, "Well, I'm quite happy when I played, to be honest." I mean, it's I think the only great benefit today would be the money, I guess. But in terms of enjoyment, having team spirit, getting out with each other, going out together and having a laugh and a joke, and then coming back, and it's great. I mean, everybody's patting each other on the back if they knock it out for a corner today.
Yeah.
But so it's so different. And I mean, to be honest, I have to say, I still enjoy the game today. I watch it every week. I love watching Aston Villa play. I love the way it's more of it's a real day out now. I mean, there's fireworks before the games and all sorts of things. It's a real show. So I've not lost my love for it, but I genuinely enjoyed my era that I played in, or more than I think a young lad enjoys it today. They're under a lot of pressure. Everything they do, they're looked at. We had some great. I mean, we talk about days out and nights out. I mean, I wasn't a great one to be out with the lads all the time, but we just went out and had a laugh and a joke, and nothing was said about it. And in fact, the press lads were generally out with you as well, sort of thing. And
absolutely, yeah.
Everything was in house, and you just got on with it. So,
but you never lived. I lived near Fleet Street when I was brought up, so I was brought up in Fleet Street, all the pubs around there.
Brilliant.
Around the time of, we've had like Dennis, your friend Dennis Mortimer, who I played against in the youth team, and a couple of other boys from Aston Villa. But around about the European, when they won the European Cup, where did you fit in before and after that? Because I was in America. I was in America for 4 years, so I missed that kind of play.
Well, I got injured just before they'd signed Peter with Pete, and Peter openly tells me this. When Ron Saunders spoke to Peter with, he wanted Peter and myself to play together. He thought that would be a great partnership, which potentially it might have been. So that I came in that Ron Saunders, and I never go on with Ron Saunders at all. I'm honest enough to say that, but he and Tony Barton, who was his assistant. I mean, and Tony Barton won the European Cup. People say it was Ron Saunders' team, but Tony Barton was a genius as well.
Really?
And they bought, and so we used to say every year, Ron Saunders came in the first year, 75. We won the League Cup and got promoted back to the first division. And then he started getting rid of players, and we're saying, why is he getting rid of players? And then all of a sudden you go, oh, well, I realised why, because he's like with the team are doing great again. I mean, he got rid of people like Chris Nicholl and brought Ken McNaught in, and he brought Kenny Swain in for John Gidman. And Kenny was a striker, but he played Kenny Swain right back, and you're going, why is he doing that? And famously, a friend of mine, Leighton Phillips, you might or might not remember Leighton.
Yeah.
Leighton had been there, Welsh international, and he said to me one day, he said, Brian, the gaffer wants me to be the captain next season. And I said, oh, that's brilliant, Leighton. He said, yeah, but last season, Chris Nicholl was the captain. He got rid of him. And the season before that, Ian Ross was the captain. He got rid of him. He said, he'll get rid of me at the end of the season. And he did. He really did at the end. So Leighton had spread his little secret with me that he'd been asked. And he still got rid of him at the end of the season. But that was Saunders. Saunders would change the team. He took over Aston Villa in 75. We won the League Cup and got promoted to the first division. Then we won the League Cup again in 77, and he changed the team again. And then he changed the team again after those teams. I mean, people like Andy Gray were moved on, and Peter With was brought in. You didn't realise he had this vision of all small squads, but he brought players into play, specifically to play. And Withy was the turn. I think Withy, for me, looking at that, I had to retire the year they won the league, the first division. I had to retire that year. And Withy was, for me, his most important signing he ever made. And he made some good signings. I mean, we when Dennis came, that was a really good signing for us. Dennis Mortimer, he was a super player, Dennis. Andy Gray was another centre forward. Andy and him couldn't see eye to eye, and I kept thinking, how's he going to replace Andy Gray? But Withy, Peter With was the final little piece in the jigsaw, and they won the league and the European Cup. With Withy being a massive part of that. There was some good players in the team. Dennis was great. Alan Evans, who you might have centre half. Alan worked with me for years afterwards. Alan came as a centre forward and played centre half. He just flicked people around. He had him and Tony Barton were really excellent at building a team. Although I didn't get on with him, he used to call me into his room on a Friday. Every Friday, he tried to motivate me by telling me he just had a phone call off Rochdale who wanted to sign me and things like that, and or anybody else from the lower Hartlepool want to take you back home, Brian. And I'd just sit there and I'd go, oh man, just leave me alone. And that was his way of motivating me, like just knocking me down, but just to make me go out the dressing room wild. He one day actually said to me, you know what, Brian? I said, what's up, boss? He said, I'd love to hit you. Because I never reacted to him. He said, I'd love to hit you. And I said, well, if it makes you feel better, just hit me. And he just said, get out. And off I went, So that was Saunders. He just used to wind me and people like Tony Morley and Gary Shaw, young Shaw. He'd never give us, anyone who had that little bit of flair, he wouldn't pat them on the back. He actually found a little secret of how to upset them.
I know a man like that, yeah. I know a manager very much like that.
Yeah. Tony Morley said he always called me Anthony when he was going to upset me. And Tony any other time, but then he used to say Anthony, and Tony knew, he said, oh, I'm going to get it here now, sort of thing. So Saunders was brilliant like that, but he was in that era where, it was almost not, it's verbal bullying, really, wasn't it, really, but they daren't say anything like that today, but it didn't bother me. I just got on with it. Like, I just used to chuckle underneath, but it wound me up. I wanted to show him that I could play every time I walked out his room. So he was a genius.
Well, you had a special kind of, apart from a special kind of ability, you must have a very special temperament to sit there and, actually.
Well, I wasn't frightened. I wasn't frightened of him. I think I believed that I believed I could play, which is something. And I lived on that. But, a lot of lads who were on the squad, on the edge of the squad would like, oh, my word, I don't want to upset the manager. And I'd just say something. But I always answered them. Because the lads used to say to me when we have a team meeting, Brian, don't say anything. If he says anything to you, just don't say anything. And I would, and they'd all sit there going, oh no, here we go again. I couldn't help it. I mean, people. I am a quiet person, but I've always spoke my mind. I've never sort of hid away from anything I don't like. I'd always say, I can't do that. I won't do this.
Well,
So
you've given it on the head. I mean, the key to everything is knowing that you can play. That is. Now, some people, many footballers today, they're kind of, there's a smoke. The money's a smoke screen. They think they're good players because they're on good, fantastic money.
Yeah.
But in our generation, you know, before us, even more so. You know, the wonderful players knew they were wonderful players, you know.
Well, I always called the football pitch a stage. I used to go out and I used to say to people, you know, when I became a coach, I would say, that's your stage out there. Show people what you can do. Don't be frightened to show people. You know, and I once took a penalty at Villa Park and I told the lads I was going to nutmeg the goalkeeper. I didn't, of course. He saved it, you know what I mean? But I tried to nutmeg the goalkeeper. And Ron Saunders was on the sidelines and he kept shouting, don't let him take. He knew I was going to do something stupid. And he's like, I'd scored 2 anyway. So, I mean, it was Oldham Athletic. I'd scored 2. Right on half time, we got a penalty. And I picked the ball up and all the lads are going, no, Brian, you're not taking the penalty. I'm going, I'm going to, look, you watch this. I'll nutmeg the goalkeeper. And he didn't. He just picked it up. It was it would have gone through his legs if he'd opened his legs. And Ron absolutely pummeled me at half time. I absolutely in the dressing room. He really had to do it because I messed around. So but I scored my hat. I got the hat trick in the second half. So it sort of glossed.
I would have still preferred the nutmeg.
I would have, honestly, if it had come off, it would have been brilliant, I swear. Yeah. I kept saying to the lads, I've got to try this, you know, I've got to try it. But we were winning, and it was one of them, in them days, you did silly things, didn't you, really? You know, I mean, I remember thinking I was going to play against George Best, and he never turned up. He was playing for Fulham. And I was like thinking, I'm going to be playing against George Best today. And he never turned up. Like, it was that period where him and Rodney were there, Rodney Marsh and George. It was an incredible period, and
the epitome of what you're talking about would have been one of the greatest, if not for being injured, was Gascoigne, wasn't it?
Yes, Gascoigne, yeah.
Nobody could tell him what to do, and nobody could tell him to play, and he would try things that were impossible.
Yeah, but the difference is that, and I think not the difference. That's not the right word. But the thing about them is, they could do it, you know, and they had the belief to do it, and you know they didn't shout it outside the pitch. It was on the pitch that they really did it, you know, and it was one of them sort of things. I used to flick the ball over my head. John Gidman we used to work on channel balls all the time, and he'd sit the channel ball, and we practiced me, and as it was coming to me, flicking it over my head with my and honestly, Aston Villa fans have often said this to me. Whoa, you used to flick the ball over the head. Did Ron Saunders get onto you? I said, no, John Gidman and I worked it. We actually practiced that every day, me and him, you know. So, and it was something, so you could still run and sort of flick the ball over your head and keep it going at pace. So I think we did a lot of things ourselves in those days. You taught a lot of things yourself.
Basically, that is the name of the game. I remember. By the way, on the John Gidman front, we used to practice drinking together.
Yeah, well, and the Giddy's a great. I saw him. He came over just a few weeks, but a couple of months back, we got our caps off the England England group, the legacy cap, and I'd not spoken to John for a while. He and I were best pals. And when he went to live in Spain, which he's been living for years now, we sort of just grew apart a bit, and I ended up with a family and more kids, and he lives in Spain and likes a glass of wine or two, doesn't he? So he came over for the legacy cup with me, and he rang me then and said, look, I'm coming over, and I said, oh, that's great, because we never went out as a big group of people. John and I used to go out together and have a drink or somewhere, and you know, we never, nothing bad, nothing naughty. We just like to go out together, out in the countryside somewhere, and have a couple of glasses of wine together and have a good laugh. but we were very, very close, Giddy and I. And then, as I've said, my lifestyle's changed completely now. But he came over, and it was great to see him. It really was. And he watched about 20 minutes of the football, then went in and had a glass of wine inside. He's a real character. Do you know he's had about 5 stents put in his heart now, hasn't he? Now he keeps having operations, and they keep telling him not to have a drink, but he can't help himself. God bless him.
Yeah, and stress. He's had a lot of stress in Spain. I've been over there a couple of times, and
you bump into him, do you? I say you bump into him when you're out there.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. And funnily enough, the last time I went over, he ran me from my place where I was staying with some friends.
Yeah.
He ran me to the airport.
Yes.
And we got about 10 minutes from the airport, and he said, "This is the furthest I've been from home for so long."
Yeah. No, he's a great lad. He and I were great friends when we were young. It was really good friendship.
One thing that obviously talking to you and knowing what a great player you was, and the things you didn't prepare for a game, you went and did what you did. But when you went into management, what would you look for? Would you look for players with similar kind of temperament, ability?
No, well, what I would say was, I mentioned Ron Saunders, and I didn't like Ron Saunders. He didn't particularly like me, but he was a genius. And I tried to build, wherever I've been successful in football, whichever clubs I got to, I built what I called a Ron Saunders team. Now I tried to match up. He always had 2 centre backs who were out and out defenders. He had 2 fullbacks who could play, who were actually. John Gidman was a better going forward than defending. Kenny Swain was a centre forward who played right back. He did all that. So I would always try to have 2 big centre halves who liked to defend. I liked a forward thinking fullbacks. I tried to find a Dennis Mortimer type of player, so a leader of things. Gordon Cowans, Frank Carradus. I wanted somebody box to box. So. And I also wanted a passer, and I wanted the team captain in there. Then I wanted I often bought right and left-footed centre forwards to play up with each other, which he did. Peter with Gary Shaw. Peter would have been with me, Andy Gray and myself, that type of thing. So he had a real format of how he picked teams, and his best teams were majorly successful. And even when I was at Darlington, I built like a Ron Saunders type of team of players of that ilk. You know, they weren't the best, they weren't top class players, but they were good lads and played a certain way. I had a box to box midfield player. I had the best passer I could find. I had a leader in the middle of the park. My 2 centre backs, or 3 if I often played with 3. My wing backs could play. Were often people I'd said, "You're going to play fullback now. We're going to change around." And a right-footed and left-footed centre forward. Or strikers, if that's what they were. I built Ron Saunders teams. I believed in what he did, and when I couldn't quite get that, that's probably the places that it didn't work for me, because this was how I wanted to play. My League Cup winning side for '96 with Villa. My midfield was Andy Townsend, the leader, whereas he had a Dennis Mortimer as a leader. I had a passer where he has a Gordon Cowans. I had a Mark Draper who could pass the ball and do that. And my box to box player, they had a Des Bremner, and I had a Ian Taylor. You know, so it was a replica of his teams all the time, because he had this way of, Aston Villa in 10 seasons were, in 1971 were in the 3rd division. In 1981 they won the 1st division. Yeah. In 1982 they won the European Cup. And it was pretty much Ron Saunders changing the team and building them little brackets of players who slotted into places. It wasn't a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole. It was a round peg in a round hole. Somebody who would play his way all the time. So I became quite. I'm surprised myself when I actually went into coaching. But when you finish at 26, I last played at 26. I realised how much I really loved the game. I mean, I always loved it, but didn't realise that I didn't want to be out of the game. So I started doing a bit of coaching and
Brian,
and watching games.
Brian,
Mm-hmm.
can I just interrupt you a second there? I mean, 26 is a very young age to have to be forced to quit the game. How hard did that hit you? You know, having to retire at that age.
I think I satisfied myself because I knew I was in pain, and I used to say people. I tried, you know, Ron Saunders again would let me have a week off, and then he'd play me. Then he gave me 2 weeks off because it got worse, and then he gave me 3 weeks off. And I was saying, and people would say, "Oh, Brian, when you play, you're still doing it." And I say, "Yeah, but you can't feel my pain after the game. You don't know. You can't. I can't describe to you how much agony I'm in for this 2 week period where I'm building myself up to play again." So my games got fewer and further between. It started with a week, then it was 2 weeks, then it was 3 weeks before I could play again. And in the end, I just knew I couldn't play. So it really, what hit me the most was when I packed in, when they told me, they sent me to Harley Street, and the Harley Street specialist said, "This is the worst knee I've seen for 10 years, sort of thing, you know." So what settled me down was I went and worked for a printing company, and I hated it. A friend of mine said, "Brian, come on, I've got you a great job." I could have had a great job. I worked there for 2 weeks, and I knocked on his door and said, "I'm sorry, mate, I can't do this." I went back to Villa Park. I went to the club shop, and I asked the people in the shop if I could work in the shop. I said, "I just want to be at a football club." And they were looking and saying, "But Brian, you can't work in the shop." I said, "I can. I'll work in the shop, please." So I got a job working in the club shop. And I worked at Aston Villa's shop for 3 months. And Ron Saunders then left the club. Tony Barton was given the job. And I'm walking out of the club shop, and Tony Barton shouts, "Brian, come here." He said, "I'm the manager. Ron Saunders has left." He said he's took Keith Leonard, the youth team coach, with him. And he looked at me and went, "You fancy being the youth coach?" I went, "Of course I blooming do. Yeah, this is what I want to be." You know, I took my first coaching badges at 19 anyway. So I don't know. It was fate really, and I was destined to. I got the youth team job. I did it for 4 years. And
but if you hadn't took the job in the club shop, who knows?
Who knows? Well, I would have been out of football forever, I think. So, but I realised how much I loved it, and I just wanted to be around it. It was great because I had a little mini metro with Aston Villa written all over it, driving around, giving lottery tickets to people and all sorts of things. It's crazy. It's a crazy thing, but I don't know. Villa and I have just been like, they'll never get rid of me. I'll find another job if they chuck me out of this one.
Might go back to the club shop.
I go in this club shop again. Yeah. I've done a bit of everything. So, but I just wanted to be in football. I realised, I took football. It looked as if I took football with a pinch of salt when I played, sort of thing. You know, I had long hair. I was a bit scruffy. I did silly things, you know, flicking the ball around and stuff and what have you.
But that's what I remember about you.
I loved it.
They were the great things about you. You know, trying this and trying that, you know. Yeah. You see players today, they flick it and flick it and flick it, but they flick it to nobody.
Well, they practice a lot of with their. It's a different way, isn't it? Yeah, I think sometimes they get it's so different today. I've come to terms with it. I think the talent of the young players, when you watch the little kids training today and the sort of sessions that is set up, it's all about trying to be in control of the ball and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, our day, we had to learn to get past the defender. There's not very many people go dribbling around these days and going taking people on, and you were allowed to do things like that. It's about possession mostly now, isn't it, really? So, and I think they'd probably get bored if they just have to keep the possession. You know, they flick it around a little bit between their feet because they're trying to show people that they can do things and then pass it sideways or backwards. It's a different game today. It's just totally different. And I watch it. I love it. I still work in the industry, and I really like, and I love seeing young kids come through. We had a young lad last week come on and scored his first ever goal, and he's gone out on loan straight away. Which for me, I'm like, oh, what a shame, you know, because there's a harder path into the first team now at Premier League level. you know. So I hope the young lad who scored a goal a week or so ago, I hope it works for him, because it's, I scored a goal on my debut and then I was never really out of the team. It was like, it's an easier path, wasn't it, really? So it's a tough one. The young lads today, I love the way they work, and I like watching the things that they can do with the ball. But I'm not sure how they're encouraged to be themselves nowadays, because possession is the key of everything, isn't it, really?
It's over possession now, isn't it? It's too much. It's too
Well, I
much.
think they're learning again. We've now got like long throws going into the box. We've now got people looking at crosses into the box now again, and the teams that at the top end of the Premier League have crossed the ball into the box more than they've done in the past, or more than other teams. So they're beginning to, I think there's a little bit of a change around. They're looking, okay, we need to be possession based, but we also have to be a little bit more adventurous in the final third. I think that's happened a little bit more this season, to be honest. I think especially the long throw, that
all part of the game.
All part of the game, yeah. That was again, and that's
I mean, the interesting thing about you saying, Brian, is the change of the game. It's not changed for the better. It's the way you're talking, the teams you played in, the type of player you was. You like to play the 1-2s, this kind of. That's the way to get through. And if you've got a big striker, and Chelsea, I've used Chelsea example, but Tony's a Chelsea boy. I'm surrounded by Chelsea people, and they do nothing but complain about the centre forwards because they haven't got one. And then they go and buy the kid Dilac from Ipswich, and he's like, the only way I can weigh him, talk about him, is when we got Ian Hutchinson from the Southern League. And he played up front with Osgood, and he was raw. He had such a raw ability. He didn't have the greatest touch or technique, but throw the ball in the box and he'll get on the end of it. Dilac's gone to Chelsea and he ain't getting that kind of service. No. He's running here, he played the other night, he picked the ball up about 4 times on the right wing. Now that is something, as Brian Clough would say, get in there. That's why I pay you to be in there. That's your spot. Now they allow him to go out wide and wide. You've got to say to him, don't ever go out wide.
I think it's so much harder. The centre forwards are now fairly isolated in many cases, aren't they? In many cases, although I actually believe there's a little shift on the move at the moment, sort of thing. I look at Sunderland, for example, who are playing with energy and enthusiasm and a little bit more old-fashioned type of way, and it's given them success. We were at Bournemouth at the weekend, and Bournemouth, virtually every pass they played was going forward. It was a pass forward all the time, and I'm thinking, whoa, this is like, it was Bournemouth were really good on the day against us, and I see Sunderland with their little bit more aggression amongst them now than what's been around for some time, and their willingness to work and the speed they're playing the game at. So I actually think at the moment there's a little bit of a wave of turning the clock back a little bit. I know that there still is the possession slowing it down. Goalkeepers getting the ball off a goal kick from the centre half, passing to them. That's the one thing that I would frighten me. I don't think I could influence that one in my, that wouldn't be in my book of things to do. But I believe there is a shift there. There's definitely something where people are now beginning to look back, and if they look at the stats, which we never talked about in our day, it wasn't all about stats, but I think if they look at the stats, some of the more things which take you away from possession are actually quite beneficial for you, really, in many ways.
Yeah.
So, Delap, it's a hard job now. A lone centre forward is a lonely task.
But going back to your point about Bournemouth, I mean, this all started, we all know, from Eddie Howe.
Yes.
And they really haven't really changed. Although they've changed their management style, they haven't changed their style at all. They just keep going forward from all angles, and they're just great to watch, aren't they?
Yeah, I thoroughly. Their second half performance against us at the weekend was exceptional. Martinez pulled off 3 or 4 great saves. They were very, very progressive. Yeah, and I think you take your hat off to them for that. I mean, that's they've come to the conclusion, and they brought players in again. They've come to the conclusion that they're going to go for it every game rather than sitting back and they call it this low block now. I mean, I just for them, I think it's a great, and the recruitment is first class in all fairness. So credit to them for that. And we're similar, at Villa. We're having a great season, and we're probably one of the lowest. We've spent less money than anyone else over the last year and a bit now, sort of thing. So we win games in lots of different ways. So that's interesting to see as well. We changed style from time to time. So that's good to watch as well. But definitely Bournemouth and Sunderland have impressed me this season.
Yeah, I agree.
In different ways. Sunderland have got a team of really good athletes. That's the first thing I would say.
And the kind of centre half that you like. Ballard.
Yeah, the centre half. Yeah. A proper centre half. Just wants to defend and wants to do that. Yeah, definitely.
Can we just delve a bit more into your managerial career, Brian? Because I mean, you went to quite a few clubs as a manager, but I presume the highlight of your managerial career was being back at your beloved Villa, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'd never thought it would happen. I mean, my first role was I got a caretaker job at Wolverhampton Wanderers. I was at Wolves when they were completely potless. They had no money or anything, sort of thing. And a friend of mine called Sammy Chapman, who was their chief scout, had really been given the job because they'd sacked everybody. They couldn't afford to pay, or they'd moved out. They couldn't afford. And Sammy rang me one day and said, "Will you come and help me?" So I went, and within no time at all, they'd sacked him. And I rang him and I said, "Oh, Sammy, I'm sorry, mate." And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "They've asked me if I'd do it." I said, "But I'm not going to do it." He went, "No, do it, Brian. Please do it. Don't walk away from it. Have a little go at it." Anyway, I was there for 7 games. I won 3, lost 2, and drew 2. And then they sacked me. So I was like, "Oh, wow, I maybe shouldn't have done it." But then Bruce Rioch gave me a call to go to Middlesbrough. And that's when and I said to Bruce the day I went in, "Bruce, I've just had a spell of management. I want to be a football manager one day. I've made my mind up." And now, even though I was the youth coach. So when I went to Darlington, when I spoke to Bruce, after 3 years of working with him, I went to Darlington. Won 2 championships, which was brilliant, really. Then I got the Leicester job, which again, I went to 3 playoff finals, 3 years in a row, eventually took them to the Premier League. And then with the new season has just started with Leicester in the Premier League, and they sacked Big Ron Atkinson. And I was actually out of the country at the time. It was an international break, and I got my phone just kept ringing. It was the start of mobile phones, nightmare, and every one of them was like a press man or something connected with football saying, "You're going to go to Villa. We know you're going to go." And I'm saying, "Well, I don't know. I'm on holiday. I'm having a little break here. I don't know anything about it." Anyway, it turned out that Villa did want me, and Deadly Doug, who I've known for many, it was my, I've known Mr. Ellis for years and years. He got in touch with Leicester, and I went to Villa. It caused a hell of a lot of problem in an era where I got absolutely pummeled by the Leicester fans for wanting to go to Villa Park. But the bottom line was, and I used to keep saying to people, "Look, if I don't take this offer now, I might not ever get offered this job again in my life." It's potentially the greatest thing that could ever happen to me. So I went there, and it was unreal. I had a very difficult opening season because we were third off bottom in the league for a long time. I'm a completely different person to Big Ron. I know Ron really well. I played golf with him a few weeks ago, and compare him to me. He's like night and day. So night and day is the offers. I mean, we played a bit of golf and played with young Lee Hendry. And every time Lee was teeing off to hit the ball, Ron started singing, you know, put him off and everything. Ronnie was so funny. I was killing Lee. He was a really good golfer, just couldn't hit the ball in the end. He was like, Ron was driving around the twist. And Ron was a really, his lads who I inherited, you know, like Dean Saunders, Dalian Atkinson, Kevin Richardson, all of these sort of people, like, you know, at the top of the game, Paul McGrath, all of these who. And Ron just Ron was completely different. Ron had this way of, we'll just rock up and, I mean, that's an exaggeration, but he will rock up and play. He just like had this fun thing about him with his mate, all the lads and everything. Whereas I was like, no, I'm this is my Ron Saunders head on. I want you to do this and that, and we're going to play like this. And I was thinking, oh my God, you know, like this is going to be hard. But anyway, I survived the first season. And then in the second part, all the lads, I sold about 8 or 9 of Ron's players, brought in some players, younger players of my own. And we had an incredible season. It was brilliant, really. And won the League Cup. We beat Manchester United, the opening game of the season, when Beckham and all them come through. So that was that famous game where the pundits were going, Man United are going to win nothing with kids, because we'd beaten them 3-1. Yeah, it was an incredible period, and Doug, Mr. Ellis, and I mean, it was hard work. I tell you, it was hard work. He never left me alone. Honestly, I swear he had a camera in my house, because, you know, I'd say to my wife at the time, I'd say, we'd have dinner at 11 o'clock. No, we'll have it 1 o'clock today. And every time, whenever we sat down for dinner, the phone would go, and it was him, sort of thing. So if I sat down at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it was Deadly Doug on the phone. Brian, need to speak to you. I'm going, he just never left me alone. It was like, so I did a bit of studying, and I realized that if you lasted 3 years with him, you'd done well the last 3 years. You'd probably walk out. If you didn't like it, you'd gone within a year, sort of thing. So
well, Tommy Docherty done a few weeks with him, didn't he? Done a few days with him. I think.
Well, Tommy was my first. I went to Villa when Tommy was the manager for that first period.
Yeah.
And you know, it was, he had a real hard time there. Honestly, it was difficult for him. But yeah, Doug was unbelievable. And yet we got on well. He was the chairman when I went as 1969 as a kid. So he'd been part of me coming there. And it was the fairy. It was the answer to it was like almost the end of the fairy tale, wasn't it? Really, like it was. You can't write the script that I ended up being the manager there for 3 years. I finished 4th and 5th in the Premier League. I won the League Cup, got the semi-final of the FA Cup, quarter-final of the UEFA Cup. So it was great. And when I walked out, people were going, "Why are you going?" I said, "Well, I've had enough. I've had Doug for 3.5 years." You know, it was like. I was, and I'd had 3 years at Leicester where I'd done really well. I'd had 2.5 years at Darlington and it was like a decade of like work. And in those days, I didn't have scouting staff. You know, I had one scout, a chief scout. So I used to have to go. I was going to games every night with John Gregory, Alan Evans, and things like that. And I think it was a 10-year period. John had just left me, unfortunately. John had gone to be a football manager. And I missed John a lot. But I'd had 10 years of keep climbing this ladder, going higher and higher. And I was burned out. And I knew I was. And you couldn't describe it in those days. I think people today probably understand a little bit more. And I can look back on it, and I knew myself that I just needed, because people, even Mr. Ellis, Doug Ellis, said to me, "Brian, just go and sit upstairs for a while, and we'll bring John back." And I went, I can't oversee John. He's my mate, and if he wants the job, he can have the job. So it was a real bit of I look back on it, and it was still the right thing for me to do. I think I might have broke down completely or something at the end of if I'd stayed another year with him.
Couldn't you have asked Doug to move in with you? Wouldn't it have been easier?
Yeah, it would have been easier, to be honest. Yeah. He used to pay me the compliment. He said, "Brian, you're a really good driver." That's what he used to say to me, because he'd ring me and say, "Are you going to a game?" I'm going, "Yeah." "Well, could you drive me there, please? I'd like to come and watch it with you." He just never left you alone. You know, he was one all the time. I mean, his office was a shrine to himself. You know, like he had things on the wall and the wall stories. He had a football in the corner, which he claimed he invented the overhead kick with. You know, I mean, and when we're like trying to sign top players, and he's going, yes, of course, you know that over there, that's the overhead kick. But I taught people how to do the overhead kick, and you're sitting there going, oh my. You know, he's like, and he would just have story. He had a big fish in there, and it was just. He claimed he caught it in Mauritius years ago, but he had to bring it home because it was such a catch. I mean, it was just honestly, it was relentless, non-stop, and he never came to work till 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and he never went home till 10 o'clock at night. So I'd been working all day, then I'd be with him at night time, like signing players. He was he used to talk them into submission, just to give in the end and sign, you know, or either sign or walk out. There was no in betweens. By the time he'd finished talking, he once here's a story for you. He once said to me, Brian, I've got a player coming over. I said, well, we're not signing anybody. He said, I know we're not signing anybody, but I've got a player coming over here, and his name is. I'm trying to think what his name was now. Danny Blind. Danny Blind, the Ajax and Holland.
Yeah.
Holland, yeah.
Went to
So
Manchester United.
he said, we've got Danny Blind coming over. I said, well, we can't sign Danny Blind. He said, I know that. I know we can't sign Danny Blind, but I want to talk to him. And I'm going, I'm not coming. He said, Brian, I want you in Villa Park at 7 o'clock tonight. I said, Doug, I'm not coming. He said, Brian, 7 o'clock. I went, Doug, no chance. He said, Brian, I'll sack you. I said, I'll be there at 7:15. And I sat there till 10 o'clock at night, him talking to Danny Blind, and Danny's thinking we're offering him a contract. In the end, he went, well, Danny, it's great meeting you. Thank you very much for coming. It's been a real pleasure. And Danny Blind just looked and went, is there any chance of a contract? He said, no. Unfortunately, we can't do a contract. He just got up and walked out. I mean, it was the most embarrassing day of my life, I tell you, honestly. He and I just said to him, Doug, please don't ever do that to me again. Please don't do that. So, but that was Doug. He thought that was like part and parcel of the job, you know. You're like meeting people and inviting them over and all sorts.
He's a bit like Inspector Clouseau in many ways.
Pardon?
Bit like Inspector Clouseau in many ways.
Yeah, he just loved it. He just loved having people around him, you know. He loved the fact and all that. And I played along with him. I mean, I got on with it. But I remember saying to John when he took over, I said, JG, if you're not sacked within a year, you'll get last 3 years. And John walked out after 3 years as well. You know, so and we're still really close friends. We did a non-league game together last weekend, John and I. We just went and watched Chasetown with some of our friends who were there, sort of thing. So we still keep in touch. So you're just different things. But my 3 years at Villa, on the back of my other two jobs, really I needed a breather. I really needed a massive break from football, which I did do. I went over to Spain in fact, I sent a motorbike over to Spain, and I just toured around Spain on a motorbike for 3 months, which was nice.
And Dad was in the sidecar.
Thankfully, no.
Did Doug ever try and get himself involved in team selections? And
No. In fairness, what he used to do great was, you know, the best thing was when he thought he was a player. He was almost his match day was like a player. So if we lost, he'd come in 5 minutes later, sit in the corner with his head in his hands, and he'd be like, you know, just like the rest of the life, because you always got a few who were there like for 10 minutes, just like, why have we lost today with you? And he'd sit in the corner and he'd be going, oh my word. Oh. And he just like he thought he was one of the lads. And then when we won, he's coming in and he's giving it, and he's trying to go in the bathroom in the hope they're going to throw him in the bath, but they just leave him alone, sort of thing. You know, no. He wanted to be one of the boys all the time. He had this thing about just being involved with it. But
I'd love to have been around a chairman like that. I would have loved to have spent a year or 2 years under that. It'd been great.
He was funny, but he was just at times a pain in the backside, in all fairness. But his heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
But it was just it was the way he lived his life. You know, he was always late in, always late out. He used to say to me every time we went out at night, Brian, don't forget to put the lights out for me. And I used to have to switch all the lights off at the ground all the time, 11 o'clock at night. 3 years of that, Alan, I'm telling you, it's like...
Yeah. He was Villa was in his blood, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Villa.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I loved it.
That is the bottom line of it all. But when you get these managers and chairmen that are like that and they really haven't got the club at heart, it's all about them, you know. There's plenty of them. But for someone to be in love with the club, it reminds me, but not as humorous as Jim Gregory at QPR.
Oh, yes,
like that, you know, but not going into the changing room. I don't, you know, the thing with Stan Bold, you know, some great stories about Jim Gregory when he sacked Tommy Docherty after 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and they say that Jim called Tommy in and he said, "We have a problem, Tommy." He said, "He's just not working out, you know." And Tommy said to him, "I'll be sorry to see you go, Jim." And he meant it. And he went, "No, I don't think you got the right end of the stick, Tommy. You're." And Tommy went, "All right," because Tommy didn't care because the Reddies, you know, because he got a good payday. But Jim Gregory was, you know, Stan would go and see him and say, you know, he'd been gambling, had no money. "I can't play tomorrow."
Yeah, all right, yeah.
And Jim would say, "You'll play tomorrow, don't worry about that," and give him an envelope, you know.
Okay, yeah.
They're great, you know, that means they got the club at heart, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Fabulous. About your time at Stoke.
Yeah, I had 12 months at Stoke. Again, I came back, that was after my Villa. Yeah, I'd gone away, and an agent flew out to I was in Spain, it was mainland Spain. I was in Mallorca. I was in Mallorca, and he flew out. And I'm trying to think what the name of the agent was. And he flew out and said, "Look, I've specifically come out here to see you, Brian." He knew I was out there. He said, "I've been asked by Stoke City to approach you." And I said, "Look, it's not really time. I've only had 3 months." And I said, "I'm enjoying riding my motorbike around here." He said, "No, well, just do me a favor, just come back and talk to them." And I said, "Okay." And I come back, and it was when they just got the brand new ground and everything, you know. So it looked great. The facilities were good. In hindsight, it was a little bit early for me, but I like my time at Stoke. I have a lovely little story from that because Stanley Matthews was the ambassador at that time, and the first team I ever went on trial to was Port Vale when I was 13, and Stanley Matthews was the manager of Port Vale.
Yeah.
And I just went for a 3-day trial, played a couple of games, and then went home. But then within no time, like people like Man City and Leeds and Villa and all them was sort of chasing me. So I was never going to go to Port Vale. But here I am, God knows how many years later, in the 1998-ish or something like 98 it was, going to Stoke, getting the job, and Sir Stanley Matthews is there. And he walked in my room, knocked on my door, walked in the room, said, "Brian, I can remember you when you were 13 years old." So that was a great compliment, really. That he'd, as a manager of Port Vale, remembered, and he said, "I've been following your career," sort of thing. So that was a really nice thing, you know, because I was only like a little kid, and he'd obviously seen me as a kid and put it in his locker there and kept it locked away, sort of thing. So that was really nice. But Stoke was great. It was just the wrong time for me. Within the year, I did the first season. I won Manager of the Month first 2 months of the season as well. And then it began to turn a little bit. It was getting more difficult. We had no money. I got rid of people more than bringing people in. And I think we ended up finishing 8th. I think it was about 8th in the league. We were top of the league. Man City were in the league and in that division that year as well. But I'd won the Manager of the Month the first 2 months of the season. I'd won Manager of the Month. Then we moved people on. And at the end of the year, I'm trying to think. Because Mr. Peter Coates was the chairman that year, 1 year. So his family are in charge of the club now, aren't they?
His son and daughter, yeah.
Yeah, but Peter Coates was the chairman that year.
Yeah.
When I was there. And he was a really nice man, but I'd come back and I realized that I had energy I'd built up some energy in me again, but I just wasn't myself, and I knew I wasn't myself. So I tried to walk away again. I shook them on. I didn't want anything. I'd had a bit of a bad time at home in my personal life as well, which wasn't good. That's probably why I went to Spain for a bit as well. And then I actually met the lady I'm married to now there, and we've been married 25 years now, Elizabeth and I, she worked at the club. So in some respects, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. In terms of my personal life, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. We've got 3 lovely children who are growing up fast now, sort of thing. My eldest is leaving home next month. He's bought a house, so that's one more moving on. Stoke was good for me personally, but professionally again, I just wasn't ready to. I took the job too early. I needed a little bit longer away from football, So, I think, personal life and working life was very difficult in them days. I mean, when I look at a manager today, he has God knows how many staff to do things for them. It must be nice, really. Was that era where you did everything, You had to go to watch the games. You have to, do the scouting with you as much as you could. First team, reserve team games you'd travel to. So but my life, I really enjoyed Stoke. My brother-in-law has a box at Stoke, so I often go and watch them play. My wife's family are all Stokies, but my brother-in-law has a box there, so we often pop in there to watch them play.
I'm in a box there when they play Leicester in 2 Saturdays.
Oh, okay, all right.
I go up there. My friend's got a box there, and I love to go up and see. I love the people up there, and I got some dear friends, and.
Well, I went to Stoke as one of the clubs I went to when I was a kid, and I'm trying to think. I actually went to the game on the team coach when I was like 14, 15. They played Leeds away. John Mahoney would be in this side at that time. Was it Mahoney?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
What year would that be, Brian?
That would be. I would think that's got to be 67, 68-ish, something like that.
So very young John Mahoney.
Yeah, very young. Yeah, very young.
He must have just signed around that time.
Yeah, I think it was around about that time. But the fullbacks, Eric Skeels, was it, or something like that? I think of people's names now. Terrible.
Yeah, Skills. He's been there forever.
Yeah, but I went to Stoke as a kid, and as I said, so being the manager there was good for me as well. I like Stoke. I've got a lot of time for it, and I live in Stafford, which is stone's throw away from Stoke itself. So I've been living here on and off for 20 odd years. Moved around the town a few times, so everybody doesn't know where I am.
So you've got a great story, haven't you? You've got a very joyous story, very happy story of your life in football. Well, the only thing that you obviously is the injury.
Yeah.
That people don't. And what makes me laugh is like, well, it doesn't make me laugh, but it's like people with me, they say, and when you said you had to leave and go to Villa, and the crowd turn on you and all that, and like they did with me, it was no fault of mine at all. And all I ever say to them is, well, if you get a better, whatever you do in life, if you might be a postman, you might be a decorator, if you get offered a better job and it's better for you, then you take it.
Yeah.
Unless the other side want to say, we'll look after you, But I can honestly say my time at Stoke, I spent 3-4 years there and then went back again. Because of my manager, the manager of Waddington at the time,
Tony Waddington,
John Tony, I would have been with him for life. It was one of those situations.
Yes,
It was nothing to do with the club. I wasn't in love with the club at all. I loved Tony. I loved him. It was like a second father. And obviously the supporters were absolutely wonderful. Fantastic, you know. And then
it's a good club. Like I say, I pop in there, you know, quite regular. Not all the time, but my brother-in-law will often say to me, "Come on down to the game tonight" and stuff like that, which is nice.
Yeah. But I wonder how your life would have been if you hadn't. You often think if you hadn't got that had the bad knee injury and you'd have played on into your 30s.
I think the fact that I've been in football and I'm still in football to this day, I think that sort of papers over it in many ways. You know, I mean, I think because of my management time, I think the things that I've done, the things that I've been offered to do and didn't want to do, I think it's just my football story. It's a different story, you know. I mean, and you know, I think if I'd gone till I was 30 odd as a player, I probably would have not done anything afterwards. I don't know. I think my story that I have today, Alan. I think it's perfect for me. I've had an incredible time, and I still am having an incredible time. You know, the club look after me, Villa look after me really well, which is great. And I've just had a message actually this morning. Darlington want to put me in the Hall of Fame, which, like, you know, so I'm in the Hall of Fame at Aston Villa, which is incredible. So Darlington, because of my 2 championships there, and I have massive love for Darlington, because if I'd gone to Darlington and failed, I would never have done anything again, would I not? That could have been the end of my career, but it was the start of my career, and it made the opportunity at Leicester for me. It made the opportunity at Villa for me. Then Villa opened, even when I left Villa, it opened doors, because having been the manager of Villa, you know, it opens doors for you, really. You know, it's great. So no, I honestly don't think I'm scarred, or I don't think I sit there and think, oh, I wonder what it would have been like.
Yeah.
I think my story as it is almost as perfect as it could be, really. I've been blessed, you know, I've been really blessed in many ways. But
you starting at Darlington like that was a little bit Brian Cloughish.
Yes. Yeah. I love Cloughy. You know, and then here's a little, when I played at, I was playing at Forest this one day, and I used to play with my socks down by my ankles sometimes, and I've gone past the box and I've heard Cloughy's, or he's just shouted, "Oi, young Brian, come here." He said, "Pull your socks up, son." I said, "Mr. Clough," and I said, "Mr. Clough, seriously, I'm having a lot of trouble with my calf." So I said, I can't play with my socks up. And he actually just went, "All right, then get on with it," sort of thing, which is unlike him, isn't it, really? I thought he know, and when I became a coach and then a football manager, I met him loads of times, and he always used to, if I'd meet him in the car parks at games, going to watch games, he'd always shout to me, "Young Brian, come over here." And he'd say, "How are you?" And I'm saying, "Oh, Mr. Clough, I'm really well." I loved him to bits.
Yeah.
He is one of only 2 people who, when he walks in a room, there's like somehow you know he's in the room. You know, him and Sir Alex. Sir Alex has a great feeling around him. You know, I mean, I love Ferguson. I love Sir Alex Ferguson. He's I get on really nice with him as well. But Cloughy, you just sensed something when he walked in a room, like, because people at the back, you could just hear this little murmur coming through, like it was like a little wave. He had this unbelievable aura around him, you know, and yet he was brilliant with me. He always called me young Brian, always. And he always asked me how I was, and it's only because I answered him back in a polite manner, like, you know, I mean, some lads might just go, "I'll get lost," sort of thing, but I just politely said, "Oh, my calves are killing me, Mr. Clough. I can't put up," and he just went, "Get on with it then," like, which was brilliant, really. So you know, and the other side to him was, I'm towards the end of his career, and when he was at Forest at the end of his career, and I was at Leicester, we played each other in the semi-final of the Zenith Data Trophy or something like that. And he'd obviously had a few. You know, it was that period where he'd had a drink or two, And we went in the referee's room, and you took your captain in with you at that time. And I had a lad called Steve Walsh, you know, Big Walsh, he plays for Leicester. Fiery, big, fiery, strong. And Clough, he kicked him in the referee's room. He's just whacked him round. He just kicked him and went, "What are you going to do about that then, son?" And Walsh couldn't speak. He was that nervous. He went, "Nothing, Mr. Clough." It's like, it was an incredible sort of thing. He was so unique. He's just like, he's brilliant. And I love
the game wouldn't be the same game without him, would it?
No, he was
Take him out of the game.
Incredible figure, incredible man,
Yeah.
brilliant man. So I was very fortunate that he liked me, which was great, really. You know, so really chuffed.
And his son, you know,
No, I've not really. I don't know. I've not really not had any doings at all.
Absolutely top class.
Yeah. And he's still managing today, isn't he? Still going at it.
Man,
so credit. The football's well and truly in their blood, sort of thing. So that's great. Nigel, I've not really got to know Nigel.
He's a completely different young man. Completely different. You wouldn't know that he was Brian Clough's son.
Lovely.
When I met him, I mentioned the book, the film, and he went, "It's already done."
Yeah,
it's already done. Yeah. It was brilliant. But he was a lovely young fella, and
smashing.
Good. He's done great in the game as well.
Okay, well, we've probably taken up far too much of your time, Brian. It's been fascinating listening to your football and your life story. It's been great to have you on, hasn't it, Alan?
That's fantastic. I'm going to call you if you don't mind. I'm going to get your number.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, do that. Yeah, that would be nice. And if you're up this way, then I'll pop. If you're up at Stoke sometime, I'll try and pop in. That's for sure.
I'm up there for the Leicester game.
Yeah, I'll have to see where we are. I can't think where we might be. Sort of thing.
I'll give you a call if we can meet up. That would be great.
That would be brilliant. All right, Alan, that's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Terrific. Well, thanks again, Brian. We really appreciate